Hey guys, good morning and welcome back to this week's episode of What the Heck Do You Do? A weekly podcast where we highlight local business owners doing unique and unusual things. This week's episode is brought to you by Corey Michael Design and Consulting. And that's, of course, because I'm sitting here with Mr. Corey Michael. So,
hello.
Hello, sir. We're just going to dive right in.
Let's do it.
Go. So, how are you today?
I, living that big quarantine energy life.
Nice.
Just loving life. Many things have not changed for my wife and I. I already work from home. My wife is already a stay-at-home mom. My baby's a stay-at-home baby. So, it's just kind of life is normal for us.
Those babies just, freeloading for years on end. It's unbelievable.
Seriously.
So tell us, why don't you tell us what the heck you do?
Yeah. So I am a graphic design and marketing dude. I do consulting, I do coaching, I do the done-for-you services. I'm just, like I said, I work out in my home, and so I get to work with people really kind of up and down the West Coast right now because I'm from California and specifically the Sacramento area. And so I really enjoy getting to help a lot of business owners figure out their marketing stuff, and maybe it starts with the logo and it evolves into website and social media marketing. And I also super nerd out on automations and like making things like when you do one thing, it causes something else to happen automatically, or take information from one area, put it to another. I like building systems and frameworks and all that kind of stuff just to help people make their lives easier, because this life is way too short to stress about stupid stuff like that.
Sure. So plenty to unpack there, and over the course of this show, we'll certainly dig into some of those services and get real specific. But maybe a quick backstory about where you started and how you ended up here.
Sure. Yeah. Not sure how I ended up here, but I am from Sacramento. Like I said, I was actually a pastor on staff at a church for about 10 years. 6 years. I was on staff for 10. Started off just out of high school. Became the media intern, and I was already doing graphic design for a long time at that point. I mean, I started teaching myself in kindergarten with a Windows 3.1 machine.
Oh, yeah?
There was
3.1 or 3.11?
3.1 specifically, I remember. And then I remember when we got 3.11, but I had this Beauty and the Beast greeting card making program that you could do three things. You could change the color, you could add the border, and you could choose your character, and that was it. But I love just like mix and matching, and choosing you could choose between purple and black. That was all you could print back then. But I really liked, choosing the character and writing my own little message and printing them out for people. And then that kind of just grew from there, and I really enjoyed drawing. I realized that I was an entrepreneur. Last year, I realized it. I didn't ever think of myself that way, but ever since I was like in 5th grade, kids used to pay me in our currency system in the 5th grade were tickets. So you could, you do something good or do your homework on time, whatever. You can get pencils, whatever.
Sure.
Kids would pay me tickets to draw Pokemon for them. Eventually it got to the point where I amassed so many tickets doing that they had to put a ban on me from drawing for people because they didn't think it was fair. The kids,
you needed to launder the tickets somehow so that they seemed authentic.
So that put my early entrepreneur stages to rest for a little bit. But I always enjoyed tinkering around on computer and drawing things, and I took a cartooning class, and then my dad became a photographer when I was in 7th grade, and he got Photoshop on his computer.
Oh, man.
Photoshop Elements is what it was, 2.0 at the time.
Are we on like Windows 98 now? What are we looking at?
Windows 98, Windows NT. Yeah.
Okay, NT, nice.
And I started teaching myself how to use it, not just for photo editing, but making just like little random characters. I got a Wacom tablet and started drawing, and that went into a lot of different directions with what I did with that. But eventually I started doing more like logos and things for friends and bands, In high school, I was the yearbook editor, which, by the way, is super nerdy. I understand. I even went to yearbook camp. So if that's not the most nerdiest thing besides band camp you've ever heard, I don't know what is, but it was a lot of fun. And then when I got out of high school, so I had already been, doing these graphics and everything, and my church hired me to be the graphics kid. And I also began learning a little bit about lighting and sound and live production, the stuff that our good friend Sadie's doing. I learned all that. I started learning social media and other marketing from I had a marketing director. So I did that internship for a year, then became the graphic designer after about I did that for 2 years after being the intern for a year.
Okay.
And they hired me on. The plan wasn't for me to go into being a pastor at whatever point. My goal actually wasn't even to work for my church. I was helping out. I thought it was going to be this cool thing.
Sure.
And I actually got accepted into the Art Institute for graphic design down in California. They don't exist anymore because they ended up being super shady, which is part of why I didn't go, because it was like $100K for a 3-year program that guaranteed you almost nothing afterwards. So people just kind of realized how scammy it was. So I decided not to go there. The church hired me to be the graphic designer for 2 years. So that was great because that's what I was going to go to school for.
Right.
But it's funny because graphic design, that was my passion, and I was doing graphic design for the church, but I was in school at that time in community college to be a psychologist.
Of course you were. It
Right.
makes perfect sense.
Because why not? And so I wanted to do psychology. Specifically, I wanted to be a counselor for kids with Tourette syndrome. I have Tourette syndrome. Some of my little coughs that you're hearing me do are actually my tics, not allergies or anything like that. Just a little fun fact behind the scenes for you.
I have never heard you curse, and I feel like that would make you
I just
way
curse
more
when I want
entertaining
to.
as a...
I went to high school with a girl who had that version of it. There are 3 different versions of it.
Okay.
There's coprolalia, which is the one that's like the cussy, screaming one. How awkward would that have been if I had that version of it while I was preaching? And God said, "Mother," that would have been real good. But then I have the other 2. Echolalia, so has echo in it, so I repeat things that I hear, sometimes subconsciously or unconsciously, and sometimes on purpose. I can make a lot of weird sounds because of that, just bird noises and dog barks and weirdo stuff. And then Paleo is repeating what I say more in my head, and it's really closely associated with OCD. So I have some OCD tendencies, but I something that was pointed out to me. This is actually all going to relate to everything that I do today, believe it or not. I remember my mom said, "Do you ever realize that whenever you watch TV, you always repeat the last line in the same intonation and phrasing as whatever the commercial or whatever it was on TV?" I was like, no, I never realized that. And so if I heard, a lady say something, I would say it the same way and the same intonation and cadence and all that, and I'd never even realized that. And then it would replay in my mind, and I would say it a couple times. So that's part of the Paleo part of it. So I have those 2 aspects of it. I don't have the coprolalia part of it. So as you can imagine, that made me kind of a little strange growing up, because I would be walking around and doing some different tics. And in 3rd grade, my mom actually had to go into my class and kind of tell them why I was the way that I was.
Right.
And it actually was a source of rejection in my life, which, again, this is all going to tie back to why I do what I do, which is
even if it doesn't, I'm having a great time.
Yeah.
So carry on.
My earliest memory, and some people that may be watching this maybe have heard this before, was when I was in preschool. One of my earliest memories was when I was in preschool. I was hanging out with a bunch of kids, a bunch of guys, and they pulled me aside one day and said, "Hey, you can't hang out with us anymore." And, I don't know if that was because of my Tourette specifically, and they just thought I was a weirdo or whatever. But that kind of marked a lot of things in my life. Where I just felt this disconnect from community. And the Tourette's side of it definitely did not help. And, people would try to incite me to tick more or get me to do something. And red dye is the biggest trigger for it, artificial red food coloring. as well as fluoride and stress. So, three totally random things that are the biggest triggers for it. And in junior high of high school, or not junior high, my junior year of high school, I did a big old research project on it, and I talked to the president of the Tourette Syndrome Association in Sacramento.
That's awesome.
And did an interview with my neurologist and did a number of things. And I didn't take any medication for it. I took some enzymes. The only medication that they ever really had when my parents found out that I had it when I was like 2 was Haldol, which is a very powerful drug they give to people with schizophrenia to keep them calm. And it's such a powerful drug, it would have physically and mentally retarded me at 2, So my parents were like, yeah, we're not doing that. So all that to say, that really kind of undergirded my personality going into my time as a psych major in community college. But after about a year of that, I was like, I don't want to do this. So I changed to philosophy because I've always enjoyed thinking outside the box and just thinking, letting my mind kind of go to places that people don't usually let their mind go. Before this started, we were talking about improv. Yes. And, improv is one of the greatest ways to stretch your brain. And so I've participated in some small improv things throughout the years that are just a lot of fun, and at camps when I was in high school and different things, and playing pranks on organizations. Okay, I'll just tell you one funny story. So a friend of mine and I
think the statute of limitations is probably up on whatever you did.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's fine.
Every day after school, so we ended after 5th period before we had soccer practice. We would prank call organizations, businesses, just to mess with them. And so, we had to think on our feet to navigate through. So one of our favorite things to do was to call Holiday Inn, 1-800-HOLIDAY, and just mess with them and say, we'd like a room in New York, California. And they would actually take time to look it up, and they're like, well, we're not seeing that. And then my friend, who is British and crazy, always was the main protagonist of our story, and would just say all sorts of weird stuff and spell things wrong and just to mess with people. We did stuff like that all the time. So my brain just likes going that way and just thinking in weird ways. And I listen to podcasts that are improv fantasy podcasts, like I was mentioning. And, so outside the box thinking, all that to say, is what I love to do. So I started majoring in philosophy, took a couple classes, absolutely loved it. Then I realized I really can't do anything with a philosophy major. So
it looks good on the wall.
Yeah, the only person I've ever known to actually have a philosophy degree was the business manager of the Apple store back home. And it's really kind of random why I know that, but that's the only person. And I was like, well, that's not really helping him. He's a business manager in an Apple store. So then I changed to English. English has always been my best subject growing up. I was in honors classes. And
your primary language.
And my primary language. I'm super good at English, guys. I
speak English real good.
Yeah, me speak English real nice. I was like, it would be cool to be a teacher and teach people English, not to speak English, just to use it properly. And so I started doing that, took a couple more classes, but I was like, I don't want to be an English teacher. I don't want to take another 8 years of school just to get this degree or whatever it's going to be. So then I changed to linguistics, the study of language, because I love...
really went the other way on that one, huh?
Yeah, I was like, you know what, here's English. I'm going to do a different language instead. I started doing linguistics, and my teacher was a most fascinating human I've ever met. He was this 70-something-year-old Scottish guy, wore a kilt every day to class, spoke 30 languages fluently, and understood 60. I was like, that's crazy. I have no use for that. So I only took one. After changing my major to linguistics and taking one class, I decided that wasn't for me. I took 5 years of Spanish. I started to teach myself Japanese and Russian at one point. An ex-girlfriend of mine was Filipino. So, I've had these interests in
Ohio
language.
Gozaimasu.
What's that?
Ohio Gozaimasu.
Sure. Yeah. Bless you. And then... And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to get a graphic design degree because that's really what I want to do. And then I ended up not even doing that. I just got my general education AA degree. But then the church hired me to be, a graphic designer. And so it was all fine. It all ended up working out. But what was amazing is all of those things that I started majoring in, I used all those in my time and still do to this day as a pastor and as a marketing guy, because you have to have the psychology to understand what triggers people and know how people think and be able to speak to certain things, use emotional connection and logical connection, the two sides of marketing.
Sure.
Then there's the philosophy. I love having moments with clients where they've just never thought about something before, and then I just say, well, have you ever considered this? And they're like, oh my gosh, I never thought about that before.
Right.
So I'll give an example of what that looks like. I have a client, she's an interior designer, and her kind of passion is she really likes to design and create spaces that help you feel like when you come home at the end of the day that it's your kingdom. Okay. And you can let your hair down, you can relax, there's no stress, kind of the feng shui of it all, and just have like a peace and a sense of belonging in your own space, right? And I said, that's awesome. Why do you feel that way? Why is that your passion? The whole why stuff. Mm-hmm. And she's like, well, I don't know. It's just something I've always enjoyed doing. And I have done it ever since I was a little girl, and just like moving things around and just matching, color coordinating, all that kind of stuff. I was like, sweet. Why? And she's like, I don't really know how to answer that question. I said, is it possible? And tell me if I'm wrong. I was like, when you were a little girl, did you have kind of a chaotic environment where your parents were either always at each other's throats, or maybe they were divorced and just fighting all the time, and there was just no sense of control, just chaos everywhere, and you felt like your only sense of control was to change everything in your room around to be the way you wanted to be? And she goes, holy crap. That's exactly what it is. And so that was an incredible moment of breakthrough for her, that just by me stepping back and looking at all of it, being able to kind of direct her, and that's helped her in her business going forward, because now she has the why behind the what she does,
Yeah. Good old childhood trauma. Which
yeah.
I'm pretty sure drives most of us.
Never waste
point,
a good crisis is what I say.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. And then there's English, communication from the stage or with people in a pastoral role, obviously important. I got to speak several times a year, which was incredible. I was the associate pastor is what I ended up becoming after becoming the graphic designer and the marketing director and then associate pastor. Now, my job is to communicate with people and to help people communicate to others. Language, and in a pastoral role, that was more important, just understanding Greek and Hebrew, where the biblical texts come from, so you can get context, because the Bible originally written in Hebrew and Greek have entirely richer depth of meaning than we have in the English language. So, for example, the word love, we have kind of just a few versions of that, but in Greek there's like 20 or something. I don't remember. Sorry for those of you that might be hermeneutics people that are gonna crucify me later. I have this language of fascination, I guess you could say, and it actually still helps me in what I do today, just because it's important to see, even the roots of words, and helping. There's businesses that I've helped come up with business names that are rooted in some Latin words or in other languages, so that's just kind of a fascinating part of it. And then obviously the graphic design, that's one of the main bulk things that I do today. But so all of that to say, so my time as a pastor, while I had all of those things going on, my biggest thing that I love to do, which is to connect with people, was to sit down with people, find out what's going on in their life, ask them things like, hey, what are your strengths and weaknesses and fears and hindrances, and what goals are you trying to achieve, and why do you feel like you feel this way? And just asking questions to go into ways that I might be able to offer perspective to them. And I really had some amazing moments out of those times, and I just love that process of being able to help people connect with whatever it is they're going towards, whether it's with another person, if it's their spouse or significant other, if it's just a goal that they're trying to reach and they're not really sure how to get there. I love that process.
Sure.
And so that is really it's a major part of what I do today. All the done for you services, graphic design, marketing, website, social media, all that kind of stuff that I do for people. I like doing it, but my passion is more the consulting, coaching part, because that's the human side of it, where I get to sit down with people and I ask them the same questions. Tell me about your strengths. Tell me about your weaknesses. What are your fears? What are your hindrances? What are keeping you from moving forward? Where are you trying to go? And what's keeping you from getting there? And so I love just being able to hear people's stories, help them contextualize it in a way that helps them grow from it and, recognize it and be aware. I'm also a huge awareness junkie. I love Enneagram and DISC and Myers-Briggs and all that kind of stuff. And, you asked me earlier, I've been pivoting my business a little bit, and it really is towards what I would call personality-driven marketing, where I'm creating no or low-cost strategies for marketing based on your personality type. So, if you're an ENFP, like I am, there are certain ways that you interact with the world that, when it comes to marketing yourself, that are very different than an INTJ, which a lot of people don't necessarily know what those nuances are, and that's okay. That doesn't really matter for the purpose of this conversation. But even with Enneagram, so I'm an Enneagram 3. I'm an achiever. I like checklists. I like to have a goal to reach towards. It's different than the way an Enneagram 4, a more creative type, that is more emotion based, that they would interact with the world, or extroverts versus introverts. Like, I love creating the strategies that are based on you and your personality and your experiences and your belief systems and how you interact with the world, because that is really, in my opinion, in my experience, what the best marketing comes from, is based on your story. Because marketing is communication about what you do, but to even refine it further, it's a branding of yourself. It is, which a brand, your brand is not your logo. Your brand is, and I think there's a new show all about your brand, building your brand. What's it called? Beyond Brand. And I love that. And, because it's beyond just the logo. It is the experience that people have with you.
Sure.
So when, if you mention my name to somebody else and they know who I am, what is it that they're thinking? Are they thinking that guy is crazy? Or are they thinking that
in a good way,
that dude's awesome, crazy awesome, or that dude is super nice, or whatever it is, right? That's part of your brand. The way that you have follow up with your customers. Do you follow up? Like, if somebody leaves a comment on one of your posts on social media, are you responding to it? If it's a negative comment, are you responding to it? And if you don't respond to it, that actually can say more about you as a business than responding to it and having an awful reply. It looks as if you don't care. So just being able to kind of wrap all of that in the marketing and branding experience that your customers have with you, that is really where my heart and passion lie, as you can probably tell as I get louder in my my timbre here. But yeah, I love doing that. I love just connecting with people more than anything. And I've met with a number of people that all we do is sit down for a one-to-one, and they don't become clients, and I'm okay with that, because I care more about that personal connection and helping them. And it's fun for me. So there's a couple clients in mind specifically that I call them clients. They have never paid me for anything, but I've helped them significantly, and I see the kinds of things that they are posting and whatnot, and they don't necessarily attribute it to me, but I don't really care about that. Like, if they never post or tag me in it, I really don't care, because I know that they have been helped because of what I've hopefully been able to offer as value to their life.
You should just comment with your Venmo handle and just leave it there. And
if you want to pay me for this,
don't say anything else. Just leave that.
Totally.
Venmo had the Corey Michael. So. No, I love that. I think I think a lot of people are scared to engage a coach or a consultant because that's what they're waiting to have somebody tell them to start doing the one thing they don't want to do.
Right.
Right.
Totally. Exactly.
I hate the phone. Okay, cool. Guess what? Here's my strategy for you. Pay me $3,000 and I'll tell you to start cold calling people. Right. Like, so I love that.
Sometimes that's what you need, though. You need to pay somebody a crap ton of money, and I don't, I'm not super expensive, but sometimes that's what you need. For my business coach, I needed to pay him a lot of money to tell me some things that either I already knew or needed clarification on.
Yeah. So I love that you get down to who somebody truly is, so that way you can maybe, I don't know what the ratio is, maybe you're working with 80% of who they are and you're asking them to stretch that other 20% to grow and become different.
That's exactly my percentage.
Yeah, versus just walking in with like a plan. Because I think everybody's got childhood things, whether they're trauma or not, that drove who they are and what they do and how they do it. And so to embrace some of that, I think, is probably a comfort for people instead of immediately ripping that out and telling you, don't be that person anymore. Right. I know you spent that lifetime being that way because, like you said, you're chaos at home when you were 5 or whatever it is.
Yep.
But to know, hey, like I'm going to get at that, which might just help you feel better to get it out. It's like a free therapy session. Yeah. And then we're going to work with some of it. I'm going to push you outside of that, but we're going to work with some of it. So.
Yeah. And I tell people I like to make people feel uncomfortable because it's in our discomfort that we grow, and I'm planning on posting something a little bit later today, actually. Is what's something that you could do to embarrass yourself, because sometimes we just got to lighten up, and do things that would make us uncomfortable, but we know embarrass yourself to a degree, right? Like not walk out into the middle of traffic, right? Yeah, don't walk out in the middle of traffic naked, but do something that is just more of you feel like it's embarrassing, and like, oh my gosh, everybody's gonna remember this 20 years from now. And it's just like some dumb little thing, but reality is people are going to forget tomorrow what it is. It's more for yourself to get yourself out of that comfort zone. So I'm exploring what that looks like for myself too. I don't get embarrassed easily, so I got to sit down and really think about it.
That feels like a challenge before this is over.
Totally, yeah. If anybody has any ideas for me to embarrass myself, let me know.
We'll have Sadie check the comments. Let us know if something comes up.
But yeah, it's. I really do enjoy that process though of digging into and I will push back and I will make people uncomfortable, but only to a degree. Like if it's something that's clearly very sensitive, you have to have the the tact in that, and I believe that I have that just from my experience as a pastor, working through some really sensitive, serious things with people, learning, and doing things very wrong sometimes, and learning from those experiences to hopefully just try to help as many people as I can. That's really my goal,
Yeah.
So did you have another question that you wanted to ask me? Because I have another direction I could go with this.
Keep talking.
So I think one of the things so actually this kind of answers one of your questions is what is a misconception about what I do. I think really the biggest thing that I want to tell everybody that would be watching this is that there is no such thing as a marketing expert. Marketing is a series of experiments that changes all the time, weekly. Facebook's and Google's algorithms change weekly. So what worked last week might not necessarily work next week. And when people come to me and say, oh, such and such person told me to do this, great, try it. If it doesn't work, stop doing it and do something different. Like I have my system that I use. Like it's a 4-pronged approach to marketing specifically that I can talk about in a few minutes. But even my approach and framework for that, it might not be right for everybody. It might not be what you need to grow your business based on a number of different things. In general, I'd say it works, and that's why people come to me and they grow and make money and all that. But if anybody ever says to you, if you don't do it this way, you're not gonna succeed, then dump them, fire them, do whatever you got to do, and get out and just experiment,
Sure.
And really the reason why I say that is again, if you're doing it what I think is the right thing, which is including yourself in the marketing side of it, you are a changing person too. But you have core values, core principles. Your story will always be your story.
Right.
You can't change. You can't. You kind of have to give up on the possibility of a better past, because it's just not.
Give up on the possibility of a better past.
Yeah.
There. I feel like that's a quotable moment right there. So
Thank you.
I like it.
Because no matter what you've been through, that is you.
Sure.
Wherever you go, there you are, right? So you are always going to be you, so you can use who you are, no matter what systems, no matter what frameworks, no matter what strategies you're using, you are right there. And so that is the most important part, is not selling yourself short or selling yourself out and I'll kind of unpack that, what I mean by that. But so for selling yourself short, a lot of people think, I'm not good enough, or I'm not smart enough, or I don't have the money for it, or, imposter syndrome. Huge issue for a lot of entrepreneurs. Are people actually going to take what I say seriously? Even me doing this podcast, talking about what I do, there's always that dumb little voice in the back of my mind of somebody from third grade that told me, you can't do this for whatever reason, right? We carry those people with us into our current realities and in our future. But that's selling yourself short that can actually keep you from moving forward in business. So a personal example. Last year, I moved up here almost exactly a year ago. I moved up here without a job in store for me. I was just doing graphic design as a little freelance thing. Didn't know where we were going to live. I came up for a couple weeks beforehand, just before we actually moved up here, just to figure out exactly where we were going to go. We didn't have any family up here, like nothing. Like we moved up here just solely on faith and just like we feel this is the right thing to do, and ended up being really great. But when we moved up here, I should have started my business as it currently is then, but my own mental blocks kept me from actually launching it until July. So, May, June, July, three months, mid-July, because I thought, who's going to use my services? Who's going to buy from me? I've been doing this for the church for 10 years and on the side as well, but who's going to actually take me seriously as an entrepreneur, doing this myself? And so, and I knew I needed to do a launch video for it. So I was thinking about that and I was like, gosh, I just need to freaking do it. It took me 3 months to get there. And, in that time, I also hired a business coach. So I wasn't like I was just sitting on my butt doing nothing, but I 100% sold myself short in that initial time period where, that's 3 months of helping people and income that I missed out on. Now, did it come back to me in the end? Yeah, probably. But, I wish that I had jumped in sooner than I actually did. Because who knows where I would be right now, what 3 months difference could potentially look like, right? Then there's the not selling out. That's the thing that people are most afraid of. They are afraid of looking like all the slimy, salesy marketing people out there, right? And what I always say is, okay, this is what you hate the most. Would you ever actually let yourself get to that point? And they're like, no. I'm like, then what are you afraid of? You're not going to let yourself get there, right? Like you're not going to all of a sudden change your core values and change who you are and change your approach just so that you can make a quick buck, because that is not you. Like most people are not like that, but it's such a crazy fear that people have for whatever reason. And so people think that they have to, now, granted, there are certain industries where people are more like that, and you reconnect with them after 15 years, and they want to sell you an opportunity to join, right? Sure. But and that's not a slam on MLM services companies or networking companies. That is an observation of there are certain people that think the way that you grow your business is to be that way when it's not. Some of my favorite people in our Ignite You group are people that are part of services that typically get a bad rap for that kind of stuff, but they're not like that at all, and they're successful, and they are and helping people, and so
they have a personal story that ties to whatever they're
exactly
selling that makes them believe in it to the point that
that's exactly it. It all ties back to their story and their why and how they're promoting, and that's how you can sell yourself without being salesy or selling yourself out, or selling out rather. And so those two elements are really the I would say, if I were to really narrow it down to what I help people work through the most, it's those two things: not selling themselves short and not selling out or feeling like they have to sell out in order to succeed.
Gotcha.
That was a lot of S's, a lot of alliteration right there.
No, that's awesome. And I think those two things are very closely related, right?
Totally.
Because selling out means I can't be who I am. I need to go be somebody else.
Yep.
And the reason you would potentially think about doing that is because you feel like who you are isn't good enough.
Right.
So yeah, no, that stuff's, it's all interesting and it's all intertwined. My fascinating, I have two stories from childhood that definitely crafted like who I am now. And so the first one is I always wanted to be a pilot and an astronaut. I walked out of the nurse's office in 4th grade finding out I was colorblind. And the story is, you can't fly if you're colorblind, right?
Yeah.
Whether that may have been very true, sort of true, kind of true.
Yeah.
I don't really even know. But it was just, that was the word on the street when I was a kid. And so I remember walking out. I can still visualize. I can't visualize much about my elementary school.
Yeah.
But I can still visualize exactly where the nurse's office is. I still remember the garbage can for some reason, kind of near the door. And I can remember walking out of there because she did like the thing with the circles.
You're
supposed to clearly see letters and numbers in it. And
Right.
I was like, you're kidding, right?
Right,
Like,
yeah.
It's a bunch of random circles.
Why are you showing me circles?
Yeah, why are there random circles inside a bigger circle?
Yeah.
I don't get what you're doing here. Like, is this a joke? It turns out my sister all along knew I was colorblind. She was actually teaching me what color things were.
Interesting.
And I was smart enough to memorize it.
Huh.
So I knew what color things were because I knew they were supposed to be a certain color.
Right.
But if you were to show me a brown apple, I would have told you it's red because apples are red, kind of thing. But and then the other thing that I remember is being in 1st grade, and the teacher would say, ask a question, what's 2 + 2 or whatever we're doing in that grade. And I would just scream out the answer. You asked a question, I know the answer. So I would scream it out. And then I would get in trouble with her, my mom and stuff, and I'd have to raise my hand. So then for a while, I think 4, right? Like I raised my hand as I gave the answer. I complied, I understand. And then it turned into, no, like you have to raise your hand and wait. And so I was constantly raising my hand, but obviously in the effort to get everyone involved, right, you don't keep calling on the same kid.
Right.
And so that turned into like, you don't have permission to speak. And I over time and even the last couple of years, like I realized it. Like if I got on a conference call with 3 of my peers and my boss, so we all have equal say on this phone call, I would inevitably go last. Whatever we were doing, whether it was chiming into a conversation, it's like I would see if anybody else like said what I wanted to say or came up with a solution that was going to work for the problem that my boss was asking about.
Yeah.
And then if not, then I'd be like, so here's what I heard and here's what I think we should do. But it's almost like I would just sit and wait for that. And so it's fascinating how.
Yeah. So, sorry. Have you found that that has ended up serving you in what you do now, just from sitting back and listening and taking in all of the information and then being able to present a solution based on all of that?
I think so. I mean, it's definitely a pro that, I become a better listener, and I don't necessarily – I know some people talk their way through a problem, and I know it frustrates my fiance because I don't. So she wants to talk out loud.
Not a verbal processor.
I sit quietly for a while, and then I'm like,
Totally.
like 10 minutes later, I'm like, hey, here's what we should do. She's like, I moved on like 10 minutes ago. What are you talking about? But so at times, yes.
Yeah.
And then at times it's certainly hindered me in that it's like I'm waiting for permission to call you and follow up. We had a good conversation about what you wanted to do business-wise, and, you seemed interested, but, well, I don't want to be that guy that, interrupts your dinner or your time with your kids to be like, hey, remember how we talked last week and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's still, I've gotten better about it and reminding myself like, hey, you have permission, people want to hear what you have to say, kind of like, but it's funny because something like this, no problem.
Sure.
because you handed me a microphone and you said it's okay to talk.
Yeah.
I've been a corporate trainer where I've trained a room of 200 people. I've been a trivia host. I've officiated weddings. So like anything where like you tell me like you're the one who's speaking.
Yeah.
Like those don't even really make me nervous.
Sure.
Some people have this huge fear of public speaking. Like I'm totally cool.
Yeah.
And same thing with one-on-one. If you and I are having coffee, then obviously I'm expected to talk. Right. But everything in the middle, room full of 10 people, I'll probably be quiet for a while for that very reason. Like I don't know. Like I said, I don't know who really wants to listen to me speak or hear what I have to say.
Yeah.
And so it's fascinating. I think we all have something, whether it's trauma, not trauma, it doesn't matter. I think people picture trauma as being like a real big, huge event. Right.
Car crash, something like that.
Your parent hit you or whatever it is. Whereas there's like, complex trauma and PTSD and small micro things that just got, like you said, to get buried in there. I think you've studied psychology more than I have. I've heard it's like age 7 or somewhere in there. You kind of like, some of those things get locked in. And at that point, like, you really have to dive in and find them and pull them out and do whatever you got to do, hypnotherapy or do something to try and change it at that point. And so, but yeah, it's interesting how that can form. Yeah. I'm almost 40 and that still affects how I go about things.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and, to go back to the rejection side of it for me and not feeling connected to community. So, there are instances where I find I'm in the same boat where I wait until everybody else has said their piece and then I get my opinion. Other times, I'm the first one. But I have one particular memory where I was hanging out with a group of guys in high school, and we were hanging out. It was we played soccer together, and there was one guy from varsity. I was on JV, and he was hanging out with us for whatever reason, probably because he couldn't get other friends. He's a jerk. Anyways, not bitter. It's fine.
He had a level down. Yeah, the JV guys.
He was hanging out with us, and I tried making a joke, and he murmured something under his breath, and while I was saying whatever it was, I don't remember what it was, and I was like, "Oh, what'd you say?" And he said, "I said you're a douchebag." I was like, "Oh, okay." And so none of my friends, quotations, stood up for me, nothing like that. He could also beat up anybody in the school. He was that guy, like that would just beat the crap out of somebody. But I just remember feeling so just like, okay, my voice doesn't matter, and it's actually been hard for me over the years to be funny on purpose. So when I make people laugh, most of the time it's because it's just something random that comes to my mind. Like I have to actually though rehearse jokes in my brain. Like there was like one thing I said today already that I rehearsed back home in my bathroom, not like out loud to the mirror, but thinking about it, like how I would deliver it. Like I feel like I have to do that level in order to make sure that people appreciate, the humor behind it or whatever, right? And so that all plays into what I do and how I help people, and it's like what you're saying. It's now, was that a devastating moment? No, it hurt, and I learned a lot from that, and just evaluating what I say and how I say it, and really that helps me contextualize, just like when I'm selling my own business, right? And marketing my own business, like what am I going to say? Like just the intentionality of it that's going to connect with people or not connect with people. And, there's still people that think that what I have to say and offer is dumb and that's okay. I don't really care about them. I don't want their business anyways, but that's something that I really try to help people with, because you really don't know what it's like to be on the other side of you. Like
quotable moment number 2. Like you really don't know what it's like to be on the other side of you.
Because if you think about it,
you've never met you.
You've never met you. You are you. Yeah. So when you walk into the room, again, this goes back to what I said earlier, though. Like, what is it that people are thinking about you? And so having that level of intentionality, I hate doing anything that is going to cause anybody to change their opinion of me. So I don't post anything political. Not that I have much to contribute anyways, because everybody else has their voices. I don't don't typically, unless it's in a more one-on-one kind of conversation, I never do anything publicly that's going to shape people's opinion of me. Now, is that a people-pleasing thing? Absolutely. Yeah. But is it serving me? Right now it is, so we'll see. There are certain things at certain times that I'll speak up about. But I did an exercise with a number of people, and I would challenge you guys to do this and people watching, because it was one of the most I would say life-changing things for me, okay? Maybe not that dramatic, but it is that dramatic without saying it that way. Life-changing. I gave a challenge when I was a pastor to, we were talking about relationships, and I told them that, and I said, slightly different than you don't know what it's like to be on the other side of you, but I said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to 2 or 3 people and ask them, and it has to be people that you trust, that are not gonna just crap all over you, but they're also not gonna just give you a bunch of sugar and fluff either. People
Sure.
that have your best interest at heart, that are for you. Okay, ask them, what is it like to be on the other side of me? That's all you have to say. You don't need to give any kind of justification other than, I'm on a self-discovery journey. I want to know the kind of interaction. When I walk into a room, I bring a climate with me. Either it's a cloudy climate, or it's a sunny climate, or it's a frozen climate, or it's a storm, like
Hurricane
windy,
Corey.
Hurricane Corey, exactly. What is the climate that I bring into the room? And so when I walk into the room, what is your view of me? I asked people that. It was very eye-opening to me in how I was coming across to people. It was one of those people. It was the second time that somebody called me a douchebag, and she loved me. She loved me though. She's one of my best friends to this day. And I was like, you're the second person to tell me that in my life. Please tell me what I'm doing. And she's like, you're not much of a gentleman. You are, and it's not just opening a door for a lady, it's just the other ways. And she kind of listed, I was like, oh, so you've been thinking about this.
That's always the best sign.
Yeah.
Buckle up. I got about an hour-long presentation. I made a PowerPoint. I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
Thank you for finally asking. Here it is.
Exactly. But that was really, really beneficial for me and helpful for me to get that feedback, because that changed how I interacted with people in the church. That it changed because she was on staff with me. That changed how I interacted with my friends, with my family, because I was like, gosh, I really didn't think about that, or realize that. And so that is actually a huge part of your brand as a business in how you're coming across to people. So I know people that their disposition is not super friendly, and they wonder why they're not getting more business. And, one of the scariest things I've ever had to do was tell somebody, well, have you ever thought, because you're having issues in your relationships and at school and in business and at, church or wherever, you're experiencing the same thing in all these different areas, that it couldn't possibly be everybody else's fault, that it may actually be you. I thought this person was going to beat me up. But they took it to heart. And it was great. And, I saw some changes in that. But that really, if I were to kind of narrow any of this down today.
Too late. That's fine.
It'd be like, that is my challenge. Ask people what it's like to be on the other side of you and see what kind of responses you get. Write it down so you can remember it. And really just spend time thinking about it, meditating, praying, whatever you feel like you need to do with that information. And that will, out of all the guarantees I could give, I will guarantee you that will change how you do anything, business-wise, personal, whatever. And so, I was talking about that self-awareness junkie in me. That's the kind of stuff that I like to do for myself. And, my wife is incredible, and she gives me feedback and like that, even when I don't ask her, she'll let me know what she thinks, which is why she's my wife, because she's amazing at that. But I don't know. I feel like I'm just kind of talking about random stuff at this point. So any other questions or follow up or anything?
No, I love this stuff, and I'm gonna go on Facebook and ask the question honestly after this is over, and I'll ask people to send me a comment or send me a private message. I don't know if I'm ready for this to be open, but I'm a little afraid of the answer too. We watched a home video from Christmas '89, and we're talking about my little cousin and how she's, my mom said something like, look at how active she is and what she's doing at 2 months. And then my aunt goes, oh, she's only 6 weeks. And then you see me, I have my Game Boy, and I'm just like, that's a month and a half. So I'm a little fearful that's still me. That's still me today. That analytical side of me that's always looking for a different perspective on.
So if you're going to do it on social media, I would add a little justification to it of just like, I'm not looking for things like you're the best or you're the worst. I'm not looking for extremes. I'm looking for constructive thoughts that will help me grow as a person. Like, so think of it that way. Just because when you're doing it on social media, you're going to get more answers, which is great, but not all of them are going to be the quality answers. Whereas if you have like 2 or 3 trusted people in your life,
Fair enough.
But it will be a fun experiment to see what people think about you. So
it's my buddy's birthday today. I'll put the burden on him specifically.
Perfect. Yeah. Nice.
Happy birthday, Jake.
Right. Yeah. Let me know what you think about me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. And there's a book I read. It was part of a leadership training course that I did, and maybe you've heard of it, but Ownership Spirit. By Dennis Deaton.
Okay.
And it hits at exactly what you just described with that person who's thinking, well, they're wrong, right? It's like if you can't spot the weakest poker player at the table, it's probably you kind of thing. And so, it highlights taking that ownership mentality. And that's a little bit of what that feels like is a victim mentality, which is the flip side,
right?
Where the reason why you're having problems with them is because they da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Right, totally.
And then you go over here, oh, they da-da-da-da. And so that's weird. Like, so everybody's having the same problem with you.
There's a common denominator there somewhere.
That's weird. This major conspiracy against you is just, it's wider than coronavirus.
Right,
Like, it's it's amazing that all those people conspired that don't even know each other to come up with the exact same thing about you.
Right.
And then on the flip side, my fiance celebrated her 30th birthday last year. And she goes through phases of self-doubt like we all do, and I'm not good enough and that type of stuff. But every one of her cards said the same thing. And that's what I try to tell her. It's like, go reread those because nobody got told what to write in your card.
Right.
But like 15 people wrote the exact same thing about you.
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe, just maybe, that's what they really think about you.
It's time to believe them.
Yeah, so it's time to start believing.
Yeah, that's good.
So, believing in yourself like you talked about and who you are and owning your brand. I think that's probably a good wrap around this whole story.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
But yeah, no, I love hearing about, we've had some in-depth conversations, but just to hear about even deeper all the things you've been through and how that shapes the experience when somebody works with you.
Yeah.
I think I don't know, they would have to pay a lot of separate people to get the unique perspectives that you have from your time doing all those separate things. And so I think that's why wouldn't you want to work with you, right? You're getting religious advice to psychological advice to linguistic advice, and then actually graphic design that you've been rocking since Beauty and the Beast on Windows 3.1.
Heck
so.
yeah.
Did you have the dial-up AOL CDs as well?
Oh yeah, totally. Yep, all of that.
Yeah, that was my first computer. Is my dad's restaurant work computer that he needed to type up the specials.
Wow.
And the AOL disk, and I think it was Windows 3.11 at the time, and trying to get on and connected and all that type of stuff. But
awesome.
Yeah. So, so I guess what's the trigger? Like, is somebody just not making enough money, or are they just new at business? Like, what usually makes people come to you?
Yeah.
Or even people like you? Just what's the triggering event that would make you say, "Oh crap, you know what? I could use some help."
Yeah.
Maybe everybody could use help, but
yeah. I have kind of 2 different what I call. Okay, so this kind of goes back to some of the psychology. I don't have a demographic in terms of my ideal client. I think of psychographic. Okay, so psychographic is how somebody thinks and feels. That's the kind of person that I like to aim towards, rather than they're a middle-aged businessman or woman that has some money, right? Like that's not what I'm going towards. So I have 2 kind of psychographics that overlap. So the first is I love building into young leaders. I'm only 31, so I'm young myself too. But people that are in their late teens or their early 20s or even in their late 20s, just people that have never done any kind of real exploration into who they are and how they're wired and maybe what their purpose is, but they want to do something awesome, and they've got an idea for something, so the entrepreneurial mind and heart and spirit, and maybe they've started a business, but they're not really sure how to make it make sense for what they're trying to achieve, and everything is just kind of disconnected, and they know they need to market themselves, but they think they have to have money to market themselves, and they know that they need to market themselves in order to get clients. So they're exactly. So they're in this like cycle of trying to figure that out and don't know where to begin. That's the kind of person I love to work with. Flip side, most of my clients are actually in their middle ages, maybe not even in their middle ages. I would say, but like 45 to like 60, 65. That's kind of where a lot of my clients are at, because they are either business owners that have been in business for themselves for a really long time, but then with the advancement of technology and everything, they aren't knowing how to leverage current tools and technologies and Facebook, all that kind of stuff, and it actually is driving a fear in them because they don't know what to do, because they've been in business and successful in business for such a long time that now they don't know, and that's a scary thing, and they're worrying about, am I going to have to lay people off, even before coronavirus stuff, right? Which is obviously that's a big thing right now anyways. Am I going to have to lay people off, or am I going to have to take a second job or whatever? People that have that fear, or business owners that have been in like the corporate America world for a long time and are starting business for themselves for the first time. And so mentally they're in the same space as that young entrepreneur that doesn't know where to begin. And, because what it all goes back to for me is, like those two things I said, not selling yourself short and not selling out, but, it doesn't have to cost you money to grow your marketing and grow your business. My business is experiencing a tremendous amount of success. I hired an assistant this year. I've been in business technically, like I mentioned, only since July of last year, and I've spent $12. And that was on an ad that I was testing, not even for myself, but for a client that wanted to run some ads. So that wasn't even for myself. And then, besides some hard costs like website and business cards, I've spent $0 on anything at all, because it's about building my brand as a recognizable, less of the logo, but more of the experience that people have with me.
Sure.
And that's what I no matter who my client is, that's what I always bring them back to, is it really is based on who you are, that you're going to find that success. So people experiencing fear, frustration, feeling like they're stuck in their business, those are the kind of people that I like to work with. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah, those lend themselves naturally to the kind of the life coaching side of it, just the counseling therapy sessions that I like to have with people. So,
well, yeah, I mean, I imagine as a consultant, it's a heck of a lot easier if somebody says, I don't know what to do next, versus, I know what I'm doing, Corey. Let me see if you
100%.
Let me see if you know what you're doing to help me grow that extra 20% I'm looking for.
Yeah,
that may not be where you want to be. You want to be with somebody that's vulnerable and willing to open up and
totally. And
say,
here's
I'm not doing well, or here's what's going on.
I have a process for figuring that out. I just have a 15-minute phone call with people always to start and say, tell me about what you do, where you're trying to go, and what's keeping you from getting there. And based on those questions, I'm typically able to tell, okay, this isn't going to be the right fit, or or I can move them along to somebody else, whatever it may be, and then we can go into the one-to-one, and then I ask a lot of questions. Like I like to ask when I'm making a logo for somebody, I always ask 3 questions: what imagery or colors do you want or not want? If you could describe your business in 3 words, what would it be? And if your business was an animal, what would it be? Like, what's your business spirit animal? Because the way that people answer that tells me a lot about how they think about their business and its personality as a business, and which really sets them up for how they do business. So, if somebody thinks of their business like a dragon, they're going to be much more aggressive, and usually it's tied to their personality too, right? If their animal is a golden retriever, more fun, joyful, loses focus easily. So anyways.
And hopefully you've advanced beyond the 2-color Beauty and the Beast when it comes to logo design, right? So, awesome. So if either of those sort of psychographics appeal to somebody, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm most active on Facebook. And you can just go facebook.com/Corey Michael Design. You can find my business page on there, or just Corey Michael for my personal page. I'm also active on Instagram, but and I post. I usually on Instagram am posting helpful things for your business. So tips to grow it, or just engagement questions to get you thinking. Facebook, I'm doing all sorts of different stuff. That's really probably the best place. But it's the same tag for both of them, the @Corey Michael Design.
Okay, and just, hey, I'm a business owner who's thinking about my business.
Yeah, totally.
Doesn't matter how you start the conversation. Just, hey, can we have a free consultation, or can we just chat?
Yep. And so you can also go to my website, Corey Michael, CoreyMichael. I think that Sadie will have it on the screen for you. And I list all my services there. Have some blogs that I've written, and then you can. There's a big red button that says "Start Your Next Project," and that will bring you to a questionnaire that gets me some answers. And would love to work with anybody, especially in a time like this that is trying to figure it out. And as we all are, like I said, there's no perfect solution to any of it. Yeah. But I'd love the opportunity to help anyone that I can. So.
Gotcha. So, and you'll help them figure out which of your services you need. So it's not necessarily go on the website, figure out which one you need, and then call you to order it.
Right.
It's just somewhere in that space, know that there's opportunity for you to grow and grow your business.
Yep.
And just reach out, and you, through the discovery process,
exactly,
you'll figure out exactly what services they need. So
you bet. Yep.
Cool.
Yeah.
Hey man, that was super fun.
Yeah, man.
So thanks.
We went all sorts of weird different directions, and it was awesome. So.
Yeah, no, good times. So,
yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, likewise. And thank you guys for tuning in as always. Have a great rest of your day, great rest of your week, and keep chasing your dreams. Take care.
Woo.